Hi everyone, thanks for joining us. We will just wait for people to make their way in through the lobby and we'll get started in 20 seconds. Fantastic. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Michelle, and I work in the Early Start Bright Future project team with Jo Krogh at the Centre for Excellence. I'd like to start today's webinar by acknowledging that we're joining from various Aboriginal lands today. I'm joining you from Warrnambool country, and I would like to acknowledge and pay respects to the past and present traditional custodians and elders of this country on which we all work, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal people here today. We recognise the continuing connection to the land, sea, skies, and waterways, and acknowledge the importance of connection to culture and community for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander children. Sovereignty has never been ceded, and this always was and always will be Aboriginal land. The Centre also acknowledges the injustices and trauma suffered as a result of European settlement, the stolen generations, and other policies such as the forced removal of children from their families, communities, culture, and land. We respect the resilience of the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander community in the face of this trauma and respect their right to and aspiration for self-determination and empowerment. Please feel free to acknowledge the country that you are joining us from today in the chat. Just a little bit of housekeeping before we get started today. So we will be monitoring the Q&A box. So please feel free to place any questions you have for any of our presenters in the chat, and we will answer as many as we can as we progress throughout today's session. We are in webinar mode, so your cameras and microphones have been turned off, but we will be recording this session and it will be available on the Early Years Hub website in the coming days. We have some great speakers here with us today, and we want to acknowledge that this is just the beginning of the conversation. So our speakers will be highlighting some of the key points from their projects and programs today as a starting point for things we'd like you to go away and think about. And we will share their contact details with you if you're interested in furthering those conversations. So there's a lot of work to do in this space in terms of supporting First Nations children to access the quality early childhood education. And we know that First Nations children present with double the rate of developmental vulnerability at the commencement of school and continue to be overrepresented in our child protection and out-of-home care systems. So there's a role for all of us in supporting First Nations children and their families to create linkages with quality and culturally safe early childhood education. I would now like to introduce Tristan De Bono and Mark Decker and Talia Harrison from OzChild's Early Years team to talk with us about some of the fantastic work they do in supporting First Nations families down in the Southwest. So Mark, if you'd like to take control of those slides, great.
Terrific. Okay, thanks, Michelle. Yes, just acknowledging that Tristan, Talia and myself were on Gunditj Murra country, a beautiful part of the southwest of Victoria. So I won't go through an acknowledgement. Just click on through. So OzChild's one of the longest serving charities for children, young people and families in Australia, dating back to 1851 with the Melbourne Orphanage Asylum. So we've been at it a long time as an agency. Our focus is still providing support for children and young people in foster care and kinship care across the eastern seaboard and keeping families together where possible. And just to put that in context, 1851 was 20 years into a Gunditj Murra guerrilla war down here in the southwest, where our ancestors were fighting to retain their culture and customs and access to their lands, waterways and air. So a beautiful big orphanage was built in South Melbourne that was gifted to the Melbourne Orphanage Asylum, which has now become OzChild. OzChild's committed to evidence-based programs. We're one of the early adopters of strong evidence-based programs. and the services aimed at strengthening and repairing relationships. Again, it's about trying to keep families together where possible. In Warrnambool, we deliver family dispute resolution services, such as mediation and child contact service, along with couples counselling, in addition to our early years programs. Obviously, our early years programs will now be, the focus of our discussions today. So today we'll cover that OzChild's commitment to working with Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people with a focus on the Stepping Stones to School program, as well as the Koori Early Years Network, and how that is supported by the role of the Aboriginal Practice Lead, of which I'm in, and the Dian MIDI team, which is our Bridging Cultures unit. A few years ago, OzChild commissioned KPMG to complete a full review of our processes working with Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. And we had about 29 recommendations relating to leadership and practice, including the establishment of a cultural competence committee of the board and the First Nations Cultural Connections review process for Aboriginal children in out-of-home care. And in our view, this is a leading review tool for all the children that we support in out-of-home care. We now have a dedicated Bridging Cultures team within OzChild called Dian MIDI, which means a family of stars. This team works across all of our programs at OzChild, and we facilitate cultural awareness training to all practitioners, the executive leadership, and the board. We meet with all First Nations family and children, and we welcome them into the service and provide cultural support to the families and staff as they move through our services. We, as Aboriginal people, we like to introduce ourselves. I'm Watherong man, Watawurrung these days, and also kinship responsibilities for Gunditjmara people. So I'll just hand over to Talia now, who's going to introduce a little bit. She's a Gunditjmara young lady, deadly young lady, and she's going to introduce the Stepping Stones to School program. Thanks, Talia. Oh, you're on mute. The dreaded mute. There's always one.
Oops. Apologies. I didn't realise I was muted. Hi, everyone. My name's Talia Harrison, and I am a proud Gunditjmara woman living here in Warrnambool. I work for OzChild in the Stepping Stones to School team. I'll just tell you a little bit about our program. Stepping Stones to School is a partnership between Beyond the Bell and OzChild, delivered across the southwest Victoria's 5 local government areas, which are Glenelg, Southern Grampians, Moyne, Corangamite and Warrnambool. The Stepping Stones to School program aims to build the capacity and connection between families, early childhood educators and primary schools to allow children to have a smooth transition from kindergarten to primary school. The program is directed at addressing the risk of early disengagement from education settings. The Stepping Stones to School program offers a holistic approach to families, supporting parents and caregivers to access any other services required. This can include supporting families with applications to the ECA, which is the early childhood approach, who can assist in applying for NDIS, support letters and advocacy to services, and facilitating meetings with kindergarten and school teachers. Now, for our Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander clients, we also have Mark, our Aboriginal practice lead, available to provide culturally safe support, and of course myself in an identified facilitator role. The Aboriginal practice lead can work with any of our Indigenous clients across our many services here at OzChild.
Thanks, Talia. Yeah, just to emphasise that it really is a collaborative approach with Stepping Stones to School and Beyond the Bell. And we also receive funding through the National Indigenous Australians Agency and also local philanthropic funding as well. The program is supported by a regional advisory group as it covers such a large area of the state. And we're also in the process of developing a program manual to advance Stepping Stones to School into other regions of Victoria. So as Michelle mentioned earlier, that we, in the Closing the Gap, we have quite a high number of Aboriginal kids going into early years, but they're not being school ready. So this is really trying to close that gap, which is why we get that funding from the NIAA. So we can see, like, we work across obviously multiple frameworks. Here we've got the early years learning framework, of course, and also OzChild's national practice framework, which is an evidence-based framework. And our focus today will be on sort of identity, cultural responsiveness and safety, but also you'll see that there's strength-based principles coming out, and also family-focused. And also trauma-informed as well, because, you know, we are working with Aboriginal people, and there is an understanding that with that lens, you know, the cultural impact of colonialism was total upon our people. Nobody escaped it. So it's understanding that and then working with the strengths. So the Cultural Practice Guide was developed by Dion Mitty to guide our work with First Nations people, their families and community. It's all around acknowledging respect, relationship building, but also opportunities for engagement and just further strengthening. It's like meeting people where they're at. We also developed a cultural practice guide. We have our own employment program. We've got a innovative wrap as well. So we've been at this a little while now, and you know, we really believe that when it comes to self-determination, that people should be given a choice, and that all mainstream services really ought to be culturally responsive. And so that's where OzChild has developed these programs and really strengthened itself, because, you know, we work with so many Aboriginal children. But even if you don't, I think, you know, it's really important as an Australian. So, you know, as part of my role as an Aboriginal practice lead, I work alongside all of the practitioners, and in this case it'd be Talia, to support and empower Aboriginal children and their families. It's their carers as well, and to really trying to support them through the whole transition process. They're obviously learning new skills, and they're going to transition into school. So it's a big stepping stone for anybody. So hence the name. And you know, like, just when you cross a river, you know, with stepping stones, if they're sort of half covered, it's not until you get to each one of the stepping stones that you see that there's the next one in front of you. And sometimes I think that's what, hopefully we're going to use a case study that sort of demonstrates that we were working with a young person around their education, but also then these other factors started to become clear, and then we're able to work with them around with the family, to really give that holistic support. One of the key functions of my role as well is in the southwest of Victoria to lead what we call the Koori Early Years Network. That's a real collaborative approach between all of the early year providers in the southwest of Victoria. The key issue we address is highlighted in the Closing the Gap report, as I mentioned earlier, that risk of early disengagement from education settings and throughout the lifespan, and this can result in individuals being unable to truly flourish in society and may result in lifelong disadvantage. So those early years are so important, as we know, and I think that's why probably you guys are so committed to this industry and this particular part of education. Those early years are just so important, and the Koori Early Years Network is really trying to build you know, Aboriginal perspectives into every day inside the early years education space, to normalise it as much as possible. We meet in person a couple of times a year, and we meet online as well. And we also develop 6 newsletters, which you can see there's one sort of displayed here. And we try to, with the 6 newsletters, we follow the Gunditjmara seasonal calendar. So we're able to provide in that live links to Aboriginal stories and games that might talk about various aspects of the seasons. You know, for example, here we had Bullumbar season, which is the butterfly season. We highlight what's happening traditionally on country and what's happening, what you can observe now. You know, water holes drying out, certain things in flower, lots of butterflies, frogs are mating, that kind of thing. And just trying to sort of encourage people to really tune in, you know. And inside the newsletter, you know, we have links to our local Indigenous run and owned nursery. So that these, you know, anybody who wants to do a butterfly garden can actually click on the link and go straight to it. We also have examples where, with games where people can eat their way through a butterfly life cycle, which is a lot of fun. And we have links to Aboriginal butterfly stories or frog stories or eel stories, whatever happens to be in season, which can help showcase Aboriginal authors and storytellers. And from that too, we can really empower local storytellers and authors to create some work that we can, share, with the idea of maybe developing an app that can go into all the, tablets, so people can just open it up and there'll be a bunch of stories there each day, each season, that educators can choose from. So I'll pass you back over to Talia now. We're just going to begin a little case story to just sort of highlight how the Stepping Stones to School team operates in conjunction with the Aboriginal practice lead. And we are an education sort of setting inside a community services social work kind of lens. So we're able to sort of maintain that lens across the whole interaction. So thanks, Talia.
Yeah, so today we will be presenting a case study of an Indigenous child who's just transitioned to school after being supported by the Stepping Stones to School program since May 2022. So for presentation purposes, the child will be referred to as Theo, as all identifying information has been redacted to protect the family's right to privacy and confidentiality. So as Mark was speaking about before, our work practice is informed by the early years learning framework and the OzChild practice principles. But for the purpose of this case study, we will contextualise the case study through the early years learning framework outcome 3, children developed a strong sense of wellbeing, and outcome 4, children are confident and involved learners. So Theo was referred to the Stepping Stones program initially to support his school readiness skills and his upcoming transition to school. But upon intake and assessment processes, it became apparent there were many underlying issues and gaps in service contributing to the need for early intervention supports for Theo. All 3 of Theo's older siblings were in kinship care when we initially started working with the family. Those 3 children were reunified with the family, just as Theo was starting to make really good progress with his learning. The return of the older siblings brought some challenges for Theo, with Theo disclosing that he had been harmed by one of his older siblings. Upon reunification, the family were evicted from their home and were forced to live in a bus on their grandmother's rural property with 2 adults and 5 children, including a sibling under the age of 1. They were a resilient family. They made the best of their living situation, even though they had erected tents outside to store toys and books and a toilet and shower, both outside. We were able to build on these strengths and really encourage the family to preserve the routine and consistency of Theo accessing early years education, despite the hardships they were facing.
Yeah, thanks, Talia. And from a cultural lens, we're able to identify that this family was emerging recently into their identity. The maternal side of the family identified as Aboriginal, but they're known as what's called the hidden generation, which encapsulates the experience of Indigenous people who navigated colonial pressures by concealing their identity. So it was for them it was fairly new. So we were able to identify that and lean into that and take the journey with them slowly.
So during the home visits, we were able to role model positive interactions with Theo and the importance of learning in a play-based environment. Mum gradually became involved in the activities we would do with Theo, and then she really started to support him to persist through challenging situations, even when he didn't want to. We would often leave activities for them to do together, and Theo really took pride in looking after those resources in between facilitator visits. We'd built a strong relationship with the family based on a foundation of trust and respect, where they were comfortable in sharing their stories and voicing their concerns, which helped give us the information needed to support referrals and advocacy to other services.
Yeah, and in this particular case, you know, they shared a little common issue amongst the wider Australian population. I'm not sure how to lean in. I'm not sure what to say. I'm not sure how to connect with an Aboriginal organisation. So we're able to normalise that and encourage them to find their voice. Basically, they were a little bit unsure about how to make their needs kind of known to other community services. So we were able to just gently encourage them and to say there was no wrong door essentially, and we encourage them to make the right connections. And then we're able to also, with consent, talk to the various agencies and other supports at the family.
Yeah, so because mum was not living on country, they were not aware of what supports were available or how to access them. The family were also living rurally and did not have the means to travel to the Indigenous playgroups, which were held 1 hour away from where the family lived, which identified another barrier of connecting Theo to culture. To address this barrier, we incorporated cultural activities and stories into the session plans for Theo to build his confidence and sense of identity and belonging. We also facilitated communication between mum and the local ACO to receive further cultural support, building on the family's strengths and encouraging self-advocacy.
Yep. Thanks, Talia. Yeah, not a lot for me to add at this part of the journey. It was just to say that, like, for a lot of young mums, we learnt this when Charlie and I went to the Snake Conference in Darwin last year. It's often, and dads too, and carers, going to the playgroups, going to the early years space is often the first time that those people have ever connected with an Aboriginal community-controlled organisation. So it can be life-changing, and there can be a community connection that lasts forever. So it can be absolutely huge. So yeah, just to encourage that and to be part of that journey is really special.
Consistency and routine are big contributors to a child's overall well-being. And without those, mum had seen a decline in the family's mental health and Theo's development. Through case consultation, the Stepping Stones facilitator and early years team leader were able to provide a supported referral to the Salvation Army in regards to their housing situation. And within weeks, the family were residing in a new home, the same home the family are currently living in and close by to where Theo now attends primary school.
Yeah, I think it was critical in this case to understand the whole system. Informal conversations happen in the background with Salvation Connect, and we're able to sort of identify that there may have been some funding options available. They did endure that bus over winter, and some people considered it not to be homeless. But if you've got your toilet and shower and your toys and book library in sheds, and you've got 7 people in a bus, yeah, it's homeless. So we're able to sort of, really drive a little bit of prioritising in terms of what might be available from a supported accommodation point of view. Which was wonderful. Thanks, Talia.
We understand that being open, willing, and eager to learn from families and communities themselves about their own culture, experiences, and perspectives is key to supporting First Nations families. The child and parent voice is paramount in maintaining their rights to support self-determination and self-advocacy for decisions that directly affect them.
Yeah, so I think, what we're sort of able to identify in this family, they did not possess historically strong links to the Aboriginal community in the last generation or so. So we're able to work closely with them and align them with some appropriate supports. Every Aboriginal family is different and unique. So we make no assumptions, but we're able to sort of identify their strengths as well. They're obviously a really resilient family. And as soon as they were able to find stable accommodation, they've just thrived from then. And they were thriving in the bus as well. Like Talia was saying, they had these routines about how to keep the place as clean and tidy as possible so that they could thrive and still do their education. But obviously, as soon as they got some extra room, they had pride of place then to be able to do some of the things that Talia was working on, some of the cultural stuff. that they were working with Theo on.
Throughout the 2 years of working with Theo, we used a holistic and family-focused approach. This enabled us to not only look at Theo's developmental needs, but to focus and consider the other factors and hardships the family were facing during his transition time also, encouraging the family's voice, providing a safe space of understanding to address each of these issues, and supporting the family with self-determination were key factors to the foundation of Theo accessing early childhood education on a regular basis.
Yeah, thanks, Sally. I think really we can't underestimate the work that everybody does with a family. And so getting to know the families as much as you can, obviously, particularly if they're Aboriginal, just go that extra mile to understand who they are, where they come from, what supports they have, and just be curious. And there is no wrong question. We've heard it all before. So just if I could give you guys the strength and confidence to lean in and there's no wrong question, I suppose. Just have faith in yourself and your underlying humanity.
So Theo has now successfully transitioned to school after completing 2 years of 4-year-old kindergarten, and he is absolutely thriving in his new school environment. The family have secure long-term housing, and mum is expecting her 6th child. They are well connected to and engaging with cultural and support networks, including the Koori Maternal Child Health Nurse and the ACO.
Yeah, some pretty good outcomes there. And our process prior to closing is just to reconvene and do a case conference and learn what we can learn, and also encourage sort of critical reflection in the service system more broadly, and reflect on our cultural engagement and just apply a critical lens so we're always learning and trying to improve our practice. So if things were overlooked or the usual process, but for us, because we're a community services organisation, social work has that bent to really be critical and in the process of learning and strengthening. So it's great working inside such a professional organisation such as OzChild that is so committed to First Nations people. So thank you. That's us for now. Hopefully there's some questions towards the end with the Q&A later. So yeah, I'll hand you back.
Fantastic. Thanks. Thank you, Mark, for sharing that. And yeah, contact details in the chat and on this slide as well for Tristan, who is the early years team leader at OzChild, if you wish to reach out further. So I would now like to introduce Sonia Hunt and Yvette Higgins to talk to us about the work that they have been doing to promote kindergarten opportunities for First Nations children in the city of Darebin in partnership with the Aboriginal Best Start Reference Group. So Sonia Hunt is a proud Bakanji woman and Koori Engagement Support Officer in the Northeast region of Victoria, and Yvette is the Darebin Best Start leader and has been in this role for many years. Yvette has worked with the Department of Education prior to working in local government, and Yvette is a committed ally and continues her Aboriginal perspectives and learning journey every single day. So over to you, Yvette and Sonia.
Thank you. Hopefully I'm off mute. So I'd also like to acknowledge the Wurundjeri people as the traditional owners and custodians of the land where I live, work and play. Or actually I've just moved to Bunurong land, but also acknowledge all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples in the room with us today. And I always like to acknowledge the resilience of all the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander families and children who live, work and play in Darebin. Sonia is with us today, and Sonia needs to head off soon, so I will try to be really quick so that I can hand over to her, and then we'll be showing you one of our videos that of a video series that we've developed through our work. So we hope that you will, or I hope that some of you may have already seen them, but we've also included some of these resources in the slides that you can take back to your teams. We'll just be showing one of the videos today, which is around transition to school, which we thought would be go alongside some of the stepping stones work as well. And I loving your newsletter, Mark. I'll be following you up with that because we've been aligning a lot of our work to the Wurundjeri seasons as well. So that was really interesting. Best Start is a state government initiative that there's 30 funded by the Department of Education, and there's 30 sites across Victoria with 6 Aboriginal Best Start sites. And most of the 30 what they call universal Best Start sites sit in local government, and it's really about bringing together. Its ultimate goal is to increase participation in early childhood programs for all, focusing on all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander children and children facing multiple challenges. And that's from maternal child health through to supported playgroups, kindergarten, and then transitioning into school. The focus has just changed to it's 0 to 6 years. That's sort of the population we're looking at. And that work happens through a range of reference groups, partnerships, improvement teams, and it looks different in each area. In our area, we have an Aboriginal Best Start reference group, which is what we'll talk about today, and a couple of other improvement teams that are working in geographic areas. And it's all based on data that we look at to see, where we need to focus our work, because we obviously can't do everything. And so with the Aboriginal reference group, I facilitate that group, but it's made up of 15 Aboriginal community-controlled organisations and programs. So I'm often, there's and maternal child health service from our local government as well. So the majority of people sitting around the table are Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islanders, and I facilitate that work. And so we look at data, and we were looking at the end of 2022, I think it was, I can't remember now. A couple of years ago, we were looking at our early start kinder data that we look at monthly, which we get from the Department of Education, and noticed that there was a higher number of children accessing 4-year-old kinder than there was 3-year-old kinder, which told us also that, there was room for improvement around the number of children accessing early start kinder funding in that 3-year-old space. And so we started to unpack that a bit and look at, there was a range of promotional materials from the Department of Education and so on. What was not happening? Why was the message not getting through, I guess, to families and practitioners? Lots of people keep saying they haven't heard of it, or they don't understand what it means, and so on. So we did lots of yarning around what could we do differently, or try some different things in Darebin. And the group decided that they wanted to make some videos for families to share, local families and elders to share their story around early start kindergarten. So that's where it started. And then once we got going, we sort of cobbled together different bits of funding that we all had, and we ended up making 3 videos, one around early start kindergarten, one around transition to school, and then the final one was around supports for children with diverse learning needs. So I want to hand over to Sonia, because I never like to do these presentations on my own. I really prefer members of the reference group to talk about the work. So I'll hand over to Sonia.
Thanks, Yvette. Hi, everyone. My name's Sonia Hunt. I'm a very proud Barkindji woman. My mob are from New South Wales along the Darling River. So unfortunately for me, I'm not home on country, but looking forward to going home on country Thursday, Friday. So I'm on Wurundjeri land. So again, I just want to acknowledge, the beautiful land that I'm on today. I live, work and play on Wurundjeri land. But just a bit about me. So I'm a career engagement support officer. some KESO, so we're statewide. Some of you may have come across KESOs. Each area too may work a little bit differently. Unfortunately, here in my network where I work, we have a massive portfolio. So we work early years, but we also cover schools and then pathways post schools. So I have, just for example, I have 22 schools, about 400 Koori students on my caseload just at schools, and then early years, which is just absolutely crazy. So I cover the Darebin Yarra network along with 2 other deadly KESOs. But it's just, and we all have about 22 schools each with the same, number of students. So it's really a lot of band-aiding stuff. I love to do more in early years, but we do a lot of transition, so making sure our little mob are transitioning to school okay. So I just want to acknowledge the amazing deadly work that Mark and Talia just spoke about, what they do. And you basically summarise what is really special to us as mob and what we want to see and what the issues are for our community and our mob. So, especially on Wurundjeri land, back home on country when I worked, because I've only lived in Melbourne for 12 years, was so easy because most of them were our mob and, we had that connection. Everyone had that support. Here we've got so many different mobs living on Wurundjeri land. So, we've got families that, aren't on their own country. So they're sort of navigating still, trying to fit in. And there's so many Aboriginal orgs and services out there that can offer some amazing support. It's about everybody connecting, making sure our families, feel culturally safe. It's a big word. And I saw that mentioned in Talia and Mark's presentation, culturally safe, having that identity, not being shame. So a lot of our families, with 3 and 4 year old kinders as well as our schools, they'll be shame if they're late bringing them in. We say it doesn't matter, it's okay. Bring them in, still they need to be there, even if they are half an hour late or an hour late. So it's constantly just reinforcing to our early year centres and schools that, create a culturally safe environment for our families, that when they come in, they're not feeling shame. If they haven't got money for food for lunch, that they know that the school or the early year centre, they will provide that. So it's just constantly being that, I think, our role, Koori Engagement Support Officer, that's what we do. We're engaging and we're trying to make sure that, our families are feeling culturally safe, that because once they feel culturally safe, and Mark and Talia were talking about, once this family got a house, everything then tends to flow from there, and then they can focus on that next step. Okay, let's make sure that, our children are getting to school safely. And it's not just about ticking the box that, this little one's at 3 and 4 year old kinder or at school. It's about, are they in the right setting? So when they transition from our kinders here, we make sure that if there's any assessments that need to be done, if there's any learning disabilities, anything that the early years can see, they need to talk to us so we can get those put into place, those that when they are transitioning to school, they're on the right path. And there's all those supports put into place straight away, because we've had too many schools now saying, this little fellow's not, I think he's got speech impairment, or we think he's got, ID, and so then we're trying to get cognitive assessments done and all that. So I think it's about just identifying if there's anything there. And a lot of our mob too don't want a label put on their child, so we've got to be careful about how we do that. That it's okay, this is actually going to help them and enhance them at school and help them move forward. So I just love Talia and Mark's presentation because there's everything in there. And I guess when you're mob, talking to mob and looking at that, that's the big things we look at. Is it culturally safe? Is the, are they feeling that? And even just starts with the basic visibility of the centre, when they walk in, is there artwork around, are the staff talking in a culturally safe way? And talk to mob and services, talk to us, they might be sorry business going on, so we might know about that within the family group, so then we can talk to that centre and say, hey, no, there's sorry business going on or something's happened in the family, and we can put those supports into place. But the Aboriginal Best Start group, I guess this video that I think we're going to show, Yvette, yes, came about when we were discussing it. We sort of said that our mob like visual stuff and they like hearing from other mob. So not just a heap of flyers handed out or, non-Koori mob talking about their experience. This was all parents, some Koori teachers. Our disability one was really good too. I don't think we're showing that one today, are we?
No,
where
but
we just had all of our parents come together, and it was such a even those parents that got together to record that video just felt that support, and they'll start a support group out of that. I think they were going to do, but it's just about hearing from other families and their experiences, and it makes our mob think, oh, that's okay, you know, that we're not alone. We can do that, because not everyone can send their children to Yapra or Bubup as well, which are the Aboriginal childcare centres here, that they have to go mainstream, where there may not be any other Koori families, or there might be only one or two. So it's about just, I keep coming back to the culturally safe, inclusive environment, which is what we want to create. And again, like Mark said, there's no silly questions. Just contact us. That's what we're here for. And it's just about building your strength to be able to work with our families, and understand too that our mobs are from everywhere. So if you're always unsure, you know, and families will tell you if they're a Noongar or a Nunga, they'll tell you. You can say Koori, so that's okay. But we will have some more early years community understanding and safety training we've delivered to all our schools, but it's supposed to be delivered to early years, and we're hoping that will happen soon. But I might stop because I know we're running out of time.
Yeah, and I just wanted to mention that we started off developing these videos for families. However, there's just so much power in them there's just so many messages in there for anybody working with Aboriginal families that I really encourage you to have a look and take these back to your teams and use them. And we threw in some questions that you might like to take back to your team. So I'm not sure if we've got time to show this or not.
I was just going to say quickly too, like the important thing, like why I've got to rush off today, is that in all my schools I do, we call them Deadly Koori Kids Clubs or Koori groups, where we get all the Koori students together, and they just have that little bit of time to have a yarning circle, get together. Like little Theo, that's important for him now that he's at school, that he's got that support and that connection around him as well. So yeah, really, really important that that connection happens.
And just one other thing I wanted to add, that from the 12 months in from the release of the videos, we had an 82% increase in the number of children accessing Early Start Kinder. So I think that's just a strong message for us all about what we need to be doing, Aboriginal-led practice and so on. So the way we need to be working.
Do we want to show the video, or we don't have time? Because we can send the link out and people can have a look at it at in their own time, because there's three. They're really amazing if you have a look at the three of them. And anybody, they weren't just made for this area, they were made to be used. So, and we won an award for it.
Oh, yeah.
We won $15,000 at the Early Years Awards, which we'll use on our next project. But also, like important events like Welcome Baby to Country we've got coming up here, it's so important for our community to do. And yeah, just a shout out to Yvette too. She does amazing work and always consults with mob here, which is amazing.
Thanks, Sonia.
Did we freeze, or did we just?
The video should be playing.
I can't see it, but
it's playing for me. I'm not sure.
yeah.
Yep, it's playing for me too.
Okay, I'll be quiet then.
All right, I might just stop the video there because I can see that some people are having challenges with the videos as well, but they are really fantastic videos. And like Yvette and Sonia said, there are 3 of those. So we do want you to be able to watch those. And there are links to the Darebin Best Start in the slide deck as well, website where you can view all the videos.
And I can see that the BSL link is up there as well. So some of it, BSL was one of our partners, and backers also, you can find them on their website as well. Thanks, Sonia.
Thanks, everyone.
Excellent. So contact details for Yvette, and also details for how you can contact your local Koori engagement support officers are available in the slides as well. And thank you both to Sonia and to Mark. I'm blown away by the amount of children that you are supporting, Sonia, in your role as CESO. So I would now like to introduce to you Melissa Lillist and Bianca Drake to join us, as well as our presenters, to answer any questions you have. So Melissa is a proud Gunditjmara woman and is a Koori cultural advisor in the Northwest Victorian region for the Lookout Centre. Melissa has been involved in Aboriginal education for 21 years, starting her career on country in Haywood as a Koori preschool assistant and playgroup coordinator. And Bianca Drake, who works currently as a streamlining access support officer with the Lookout Centre and has previously worked in the Early Childhood Improvement Branch with the Department of Education as an Early Childhood Performance Advisor. So I might start with a question for you, Melissa. Can you tell us about your role as a Koori cultural advisor with the Lookout Centre?
Yes, I can. And I just want to acknowledge that I'm on beautiful Warrnambool country, but I've heard today, and this is Aboriginal people learning every day as well, that Mark has, they've got another pronunciation that I'm not up to date with. So Mark, I do apologise for that. But for those that don't know, the Department of Education has a Lookout Education Support Centre, and we're designed to boost the capability of early childhood services, schools, carers, child protection practitioners, and out-of-home care services to improve educational outcomes for children and young people living in out-of-home care. So as part of my role as Koori Cultural Advisor, we work closely with early childhood services and schools across the region, advocating for the educational and cultural needs of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander children in out-of-home care. There are 4 of us across the state, one covering each region, so it's really important that we do work in collaboration with a lot of our key stakeholders. We also support transitions. So we know that historical experiences of our parents and carers can greatly impact their engagement and decision making around education. We want to ensure that all Koori children transitioning into kindergarten and schools and their families feel welcome and culturally safe within their new settings. Feeling strong and supported in culture has significant protective factors for children and can greatly enhance transition experiences. As part of my role, we want to ensure that embedding cultural learning in early years education, that educators can support Aboriginal children's sense of identity and belonging, whilst also promoting a culture of understanding and respect towards cultural diversity for all our children. And we want to make sure that staff supporting transitions are culturally competent and that individual learning plans incorporate Aboriginal perspectives within their goals as well. That's just a really basic overview.
Thanks, Melissa. How does your role fit in with some of the other lookout roles that people might be familiar with in terms of the SAOs and the ECLAs? Are you available to consult?
Yeah, so I guess the importance of Lookout Centres is that they do have a Koori cultural advisor, which is important because a lot of other teams don't actually have someone advising the work and have that cultural lens consistently for our mob. So we work in a multidisciplinary team within Lookout as well. So I do work with the ECLAs and the SAOs, and we look at our data. So we do receive data. So we sort of highlight where our kids are enrolled, 3-year-old, like early start kinder, best start, and then what does transition look like moving into the school space. So I do secondary consults. It all depends, because we have a diverse of complexities with our kids in care. We also have a lot of centres that aren't trauma informed. So we do that collective sort of approach as well. We also do cultural awareness training in centres and services. And I think working with the ECLAs and the SAOs, we have that sort of team approach of collective advice, because we all have different backgrounds and knowledge. We want to support what that young person has in their life currently, what supports they have currently, and also to promote and really strengthen our services. So we might have some teaching staff or staff in early years settings that may not have worked with complexities before, or trauma, or Koori children. So we just want to ensure that services have that knowledge and support. So we're here to support everyone in that early years space for the best outcomes for our Koori kids in care in that early years setting. So definitely work alongside and support my Lookout team.
Fantastic. Thanks, Melissa. Bianca, can you talk to us about what supports are available through the Department of Education for First Nations children and their families?
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm Bianca Drake, and I'm also joining from Warrnambool country. Look, those who know me probably know I could talk for a whole hour about early start kindergarten, but considering we have a limited time, I'll keep it pretty short. But I guess I can talk a little bit around the department funded supports that we currently have available. So the department has a variety of funded supports to assist in supporting all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander children to access and participate in early childhood education and care and funded kindergarten. So the Koori Kids Shine initiative was launched to help promote participation in kindergarten by ensuring access of 15 hours of free kindergarten to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander children once they turn 3, as well as promoting culturally safe and inclusive kindergartens. Now, this initiative was around long before what we now know as free kindergarten. And part of that of Koori Kids Shine is a funding stream, which we refer to as Early Start Kindergarten, which you probably heard a lot of. So Early Start Kindergarten is still around, even with the rollout of 3-year-old kindergarten and free kinder. So it's really important that children who are eligible are enrolled in Early Start Kindergarten, and that's to ensure that children are accessing first their full 15 hours that they're entitled to, but also feeds into other funding streams and allocations, such as school readiness funding. So I guess it's strongly encouraged by the department that services use their ESK funding to support financial barriers for eligible families in the first instance. Early Start Kindergarten funding is funded differently to free kinder, as it's paid as a lump sum directly to the service. For families accessing Early Start Kindergarten in a long day care or childcare setting, it doesn't affect it's not affected by any Commonwealth subsidies and it's not income tested. So none of that applies. So if Early Start Kindergarten funding is not used towards fee relief, services are encouraged to use the funding towards other support, such as professional development or resources, to ensure their service is culturally safe. So I guess if services or anyone has any questions or anything around Early Start Kindergarten, they can definitely get in contact with their branch, Early Childhood Improvement branch. But I guess it's important to note that ESK is funding to eliminate and reduce barriers for accessing kindergarten participation, and should be used by the service to support this in the best way they see fit. So alongside Early Start Kindergarten funding, the first standard in child safe standards is that organisation establish a culturally safe environment for Aboriginal children. So we've talked a lot about services being culturally safe, and it is so important that all services are working towards becoming culturally safe to support children and families, and there's a minimum requirement services must comply with. So the department has kindergarten improvement advisors who can assist services in embedding cultural safety alongside our CESO teams such as Sonia in each area. So if you'd like any further support, the ESIB can also support you with this. And there's also many resources available for services, including school readiness funding. So school readiness funding is funding for all kindergartens, which is a permanent and ongoing funding model. The amount of funding is informed by the level of disadvantage per service, but there's a number of menu items services can choose to build cultural capabilities and further support culturally inclusive learning environments.
Fantastic. Thanks, Bianca. And great question in the chat from one of our participants today, which was wondering, and we have put some text information in the chat, but in terms of seeking consent from elders, could any one of the presenters elaborate on what are the specific things to be mindful for? For example, doing dot painting, using vocabulary from Indigenous language, as I find it challenging to guide educators in early childhood settings, to what extent they need to seek consent for specific actions. Does anyone have any thoughts to share?
Well, yeah, we're thanks, Melissa. I was going to say, it is horses for courses. Like, you've got to know your mob. You've got to just get to know your local people. For us, we have those relationships with Eastern Mar and Gunditj Meering, so they're important. And it ebbs and flows too. So maybe half a decade ago, the kindergartens were pretty keen and hot to use language, and now, the traditional owners are pretty keen to kind of wind that back just a little bit and teach mob first, and then maybe bring it back out. So it does ebb and flow a little bit. So that's just being connected to your community. But look, I think get to know your traditional owner groups, talk to them directly. We've got the Career Early Years Network, so we can have a little bit of a mandate around that because we have those groups involved as well. So I think that gives us a bit of a mandate as well, to go forth and utilise. Don't be too shy. I mean, for me, it's like if you're just doing nature-based therapy or nature-based play, you're halfway there. Like just connecting people to country that way, you can't go wrong there. But anything beyond that, if you're going to use local language and stuff, I'd probably recommend, talking to somebody. They are overwhelmed, obviously, absolutely overwhelmed these days. We're in the process of with a local reconciliation group. So OzChild support us to go and be present inside a reconciliation group that white Australians are building, to be a bit of a gateway to facilitate those sort of questions, because people do get overwhelmed. So there's to try and ease the burden on the elders. Not an easy answer, really. There's no easy answer to that. I think it's just where you are is really critical. It's place based. Yvette, did you want to add something there?
Oh yeah, I was just going to add. I put a link to VAI's the more updated version of the Career Early Years best practice and protocols. So some of those protocols around language and so on, there's some more tips in there. Which might be useful. Yeah, we definitely spoke with Wurundjeri Land Council in terms of using language and naming the videos. So there was a long consultation and a consultation fee involved as well. Yeah.
Can I just add on to there as well, just the importance of, I was going to say VAI as well, but as Mark had said, it's really important to link in with your local mob, because every mob under self-determination, they see things very different for their own, country and what they want to see happening in their space. So I think we need to be really respectful of what that does look like. And if you don't know, definitely reach out to someone in the department or your local ACO, VAI and your CESO, because someone will be able to handball you, if not be able to guide you into the right direction. But I think that's really important. There's also a lot of resources out there. Tap into the VAI resources in the early years space, especially around art, because we want to make sure that we're starting from Victoria first. But also depending on the young person and where they come from, because we do know that everyone has moved around a lot, so just be mindful, and I'm just talking in that cultural support planning space for our young kids in care, to make sure that we incorporate their mob if they know, because we do know that everyone's on a different journey as well, but how we enhancing their country, their language, their identity amongst where you're living as well, because cultural identity is really strong and really important. So I think just to add on to what everyone else has said, just reach out, because we know that people may be shame, and we, you know, we've heard everything, so we're not going to be, you know, judging no one, because we want everyone to be on this experience and learning journey with us all, because that's the only way we're going to be moving forward.
And just, can I just add to that too, Melissa? Don't be disheartened if you do get a couple of handballs. You know, if you're handballed around, because like even from our way, like we're trying to be respectful. So it might feel like we're fobbing you off. We're not. We're actually trying to be respectful from our own cultural protocols.
Fantastic. Thank you to all of you. I'm just checking our chat for other questions. While I do that, Bianca, do you want to tell us a little bit more about how the SAO and the ECLA roles within the Lookout might work in supporting First Nations families?
Yeah, sure. So I guess I'll just give you a bit of a snapshot around what the two roles are, because I think that's sort of important to, I guess, distinguish who, I guess, especially with the age bracket of the children. So as Melissa said, Lookout is around supporting children, all children in statutory out-of-home care. But I guess the difference with this SAO role, which is my role, which is a new position within Lookout, is we are supporting the younger cohort of children, which are the children aged 0 to 3. And it's also all children that aren't just in out-of-home care, but also may have a history of being known to child protection. So it's a little bit broader. And I guess the main objective of the SAO role is to assist organisations and all key stakeholders who are supporting younger children experiencing any sort of vulnerability to understand how to navigate the early childhood education and care sector. And it has a real focus on the importance of quality and early participation. So I guess the idea is that if we can get children into quality services early, they can continue their journey through the kindergarten and then transition into school smoothly without the need to sort of change services. So that's sort of the main role. And I guess the other part of that is the SAOs are able to assist for complex cases and for any barriers to enrolment. So if an agency followed all appropriate steps to pursue enrolment and is still facing barriers, you'd contact us to, I guess, assist in that space. And like I said before, you know, quality means, I guess, very different things, but I guess I guess, key experiences in this space would be first and foremost a service that is culturally safe and can support the children and families, and also a service that has understands trauma as well is really important with the work that Lookout does. And I guess the difference with the ECLAs, our early childhood learning advisors, is they facilitate and monitor children out-of-home care's participation in 2 years of early start kindergarten, which we talked about before, and then they support the transition into school. So children at home cares experience complex and intersecting barriers in education, and often supported by several professionals and carers, and ECLAs play a bit of a coordinating partnership role. So I guess the difference between the two roles is, like I said before, is we're supporting, I guess, a wider cohort of children, and also the children that are a little bit younger, whereas ECLAs support children who are kindergarten eligible.
Fantastic. Thanks, Bianca. And I know we're a little bit over time, but I'll ask one last question of our panel. So the majority of our audience today is child and family services practitioners. So do you have any tips that these practitioners can do to improve the connections between kindergarten services or early years services for First Nations families?
Can I just suggest, and this is one thing that I would love for every case manager or practitioner to be able to advocate, is to ensure that there is a PSG had within the service, and that's where carers, service, parents and any other supports can come into play to have those discussions around the individual learning plan, because sometimes there are so many gaps in the early years space, and then so many supports. So there's both continuum gaps or supports in place. But when the young person goes off to school, there's not a seamless sort of transition. So if we have those PSG meetings are really important to have, because without them, we don't have a really clear narrative of what's happening in that young person's life, or what early years centres are doing. Some early years centres are doing brilliantly when it comes to cultural inclusion, but once they hit school, there's a gap of what cultural inclusion looks like. So we don't want to lose that either. And that's the importance of the transition statement. Sorry, I'll stop now.
Thanks, Melissa. So we have come to the end, I guess, of our time today, and I really want to thank all of our presenters for your time today. It's been really fantastic, and I know I put a lot of time pressure on you by asking you to cut everything down to 20 minutes. I've popped some contact details just in this final slide if anyone wants to reach out to any of our presenters today. There's contact details also in the chat for our various presenters, but I just want to say, yeah, it's amazing to hear about the work that you do, and it gives us a lot to take away and think about in how we support and how our audience can support First Nations families in their communities. So as we said at the beginning, this webinar has been recorded, so we will upload that to the Early Years Hub website in the near future. We do have a brief feedback survey, which we will also send out via email, but if people are really keen to do that now, you can scan the QR code from the slide. But I just want to say, yeah, thank you very much. It's always an amazingly rich conversation that we have. And to hear about the work you've done and, you know, the videos that you've produced of it in Darebin, they're amazing and really helpful, not only for families in Darebin, but I think for families across the state. So thank you very much for joining us today.